One interesting thing that you can do when you're taking a look at like individual companies to invest in their stock is, depending on the company, if it's a big enough company and if it's enough like watched company, they've got a few analysts on it, they're in the news, so on and so forth. One thing that you can do that can maybe give you kind of an inside view as to how the executives think about the direction of the company's stock price is you should be able to look up, for whatever company it is. I'm looking at Disney right now, so we'll just use Disney for an example. You can look up what the executives have done with their shares in the company of Disney. What do I mean by that? You know how CEOs, board of directors and stuff have ownership in these big corporations like Disney, right? So the CEO, he has a percent ownership in the company. The CFO, like I said, the board of directors. What you can do is you can go on certain websites and you can look up where what the insiders are doing in the stocks, and just let me try and show you. It'll probably make more sense. So the main one that I like to use is Morningstar. I like Morningstar a lot. Okay, I went on just Googled Disney stock. Their stock symbol's DIS, and then typed in Disney stock Morningstar, loaded up the link, and then they've got these tabs all the way across. You go all the way to the last one, and it's called executive. And then you scroll, you can see it's got executive compensation right here over the years. And then you can see transaction history. Here we go. Now we're getting good. All right, it's this stuff down here. You can see the transaction date, the name, and then their relationship to the company, what the transaction type was, and how many shares it was. So acquisitions, all these people are acquiring shares in Disney right now, and then you can see the amount to kind of determine its significance. You can see nothing really too significant on that page, but then when you flip the page, okay, you can see here at the end of August, the CEO sold shares at 182, $1.9 million worth of stock. Safe to say he took some money off the table, eh? And then you come down here, and you've got the executive chairman of the board in the 1st of June of 2021, sold at about $180 per share. $96 million he took off the table. Okay, and you can see that this dude actually unloaded a ton of shares right here. He gave a gift to someone, he sold, and he sold. So you can see that he realized some profits here. So like, why is that important to know what the executives think of the company's stock? Did he sell all of his ownership? No, by heavens no. But what they're doing is, hey, this stock is like kind of high right now, so we're going to take some money. We're going to realize some of these gains from our stock-based compensation. So again, here you come to a new page, in the next page, and you can see March 2021, the executive chairman of the board was selling more shares at $200 a share. Look at how much money he's unloading. I mean, we're talking tens of millions of dollars here. I mean, this dude is realizing a ton of profit. Now, again, you can see sale by the same guy. Sale, all right around 190, 180, 190, 200. All these exercises, these are their stock options being exercised. So we won't go in there in this video. But you can see, again, sale, all at 170 and 175. Let's see if we can find some buys in there for you guys. Exercising is somewhat buying. It's the executives exercising their stock options, so that is a form of buying, so to speak. But for instance, and then if we go back to page 1, all these acquisitions, you can see that they're acquiring shares. It's not necessarily much to worth in weight. I mean, but in perspective to what the executives were doing, I mean, this 78 grand is nothing, right? But then you come over here, and you take a look at what the stock's trading at right now, and it's at 145. So after looking at, like a past year's worth of executive stock activity on the company of Disney, you can see that there's people currently acquiring the company at 145, and then when the executives were selling and taking profit from their stocks, the stock was more up around the 170, 180, 190, $200 range. That can give you a gauge as to where the stock is headed, because who knows more about Walt Disney than the executives of Walt Disney? Stock analysts don't, Whatever guru out there who's a stock nut, who's doing some dumbass trend analysis on a chart, they don't know more. There's nobody that knows more about the company than the executives of the company. They're there every day. I mean, it's obvious, right? So that is one thing that you can look at amongst many other things when you're taking a look at individual stocks to invest in, is if the company's big enough, if it's watched enough, you can go in and you can see what the executives are sort of doing with their shares. A lot of times, if it's a good company, you can see lots of purchases in big dips. Let's see if we can find one for Disney. So unfortunately, the transaction history for Disney won't go far back enough into like the time during the crash of the pandemic. What do you think the executives were doing when the stock crashed back in March of 2020? I wonder. So from that, I hope you can kind of understand why looking at that might be important, right? If the executives, if you take a look at that transaction history and the executives are buying the stock, what do you think they think the stock's going to do? Go up or down? Up, right? If you see executives selling the stock, what do you think it's going to do? Maybe go down. Not necessarily, however, even if they're selling it, they're saying, this is a fair price, we're going to take some profit here. Maybe the stock price is a little bit too high. So that's one thing that you can do, is look at what the executives are doing with their own stocks, stock ownership in the companies that they're the executives for. Now, another thing that you can do is take a look at something called Treasury Stock. Okay, Treasury Stock is another thing where it's not the executives buying and selling shares of the company's stock. It is the company itself buying its own stock. Okay, the company itself can take cash, go out on the market, buy share. Disney can go buy more shares in Disney. It takes those shares off the market, and that adds value instantly to the stock price, driving it up, right? Less shares outstanding, each share itself becomes more valuable. So why is that important? Because if you're taking a look at what a company thinks, why is that important? Because if a company has a stock repurchase plan, or it's constantly increasing the amount of treasury shares that it has, meaning it's buying back more and more of its stock, that could mean that, again, the executives think on the open market the stock is trading at a discount. They could take advantage of a low stock price right now. Like I said, the executives, the people who work at Disney, know way more about Disney than anybody in their imagination. So they wake up one morning, drink their coffee, and they take a look at, Disney's stock price, and they're like, well, I know we're worth more than that. So then, the stuff goes around, and Disney's like, okay, well, let's buy back some of our own shares. So then let's say they buy in at, we'll just say $100, and then it does that ride up to $170. Disney sells its stock back to the open market, and they made a gain on their own stock. And then the reverse is true. If they're selling more treasury stock and their treasury stock is decreasing, that could be, again, just like them thinking, okay, the stock price has gone up pretty much, we've got a good gain, it might be a little overvalued, so let's take some of that cash off the table and put it in our pockets. So to look at the treasury stock of a company, what you have to do is simply just look at their balance sheet, okay? All you have to do is look at their balance sheet. Their financial statements, all the public companies have publicly available financial statements. You can find it on Yahoo, you can find it on Morningstar like I did, or you can go on the company itself's website. There's an investor relations tab, and then you can pull up their 10K, Form 10K, so to speak. However, that stuff gets a little murky. It's just ugly to read. It's a lot of black and white, because accountants made it. But one thing you can do is look at the treasury stock. And one reason why it might be better to go look at the company's 10K from their website is because sometimes Yahoo and Morningstar, the information's just a little bit not as detailed, right? So you go to the balance sheet. What are we looking at? We're looking at annual. Let's try quarterly, just for the balance sheet. And then we open up the stockholders equity tab, and then you can see actually that the treasury stock, you can see the quarter end here, treasury stock balance has not been increasing over the past year. So let's take a look at 9/30 December September 30th 2020 to September 30th 2021. We can see that the treasury stock balance didn't increase on this. Another place that you can go to for maybe a more detailed one is the statement of cash flows, and then treasury stock repurchases will be in the financing activities section. And then you just try to open up these tabs. You can see common stock issued, dividend paid. It's not giving us the detail, so it will just go off the balance sheet. But it looks like they weren't purchasing much treasury stock. So we can see, the balance of the treasury stock is pretty much the same. Now, don't worry about this big drop. In 2018, Disney made an acquisition of Fox, and that kind of throws the balance sheet on edge. I mean, look at how large the assets went up, right? Boom, $100 billion. They acquired Fox. So don't compare 2018 to 2019. It's not necessarily fair to do such. But anyways, you can see the treasury stock balance since 2019 hasn't really grown. So let's just kind of take a look at Disney's overall stock price over the past since 2019 September. So then we can kind of come back here. We'll go to the 5-year mark, and then you can see we're in 2019 of September. And again, it's at about 137, and then you can kind of see the trend it did, right? So you had the coronavirus. And another reason why this is just one thing to look at, but nothing is a tell-all ever, is because a company will only be able to repurchase its own treasury stock if it has sufficient cash on hand. So, during the coronavirus pandemic, did the company of Disney have extra cash on hand? Probably not. They were probably really scared. So they didn't purchase any treasury stock. But you can see that over here, the stock price was around 130, 140, took the big dip, but then it shot up way here, and the company, was deciding not to repurchase treasury stock, which then directly coincides with the executives selling ownership of their Disney stock because it was high. You see how those two things somewhat correlate to each other, at least in this situation? So those are two things that are actually pretty interesting that can give you somewhat of an inside look as to what the executives think about the company. Look at what the executives are doing with their own stocks, ownership in that company, and then take a look at what the treasury stock of that company is. Like I said, there's two places you can go to look for it on that. You can look on the balance sheet in the equity section, or you can look on the statement of cash flows in the financing activity section. So there's two places that you can go. And then, of course, financial statements are always backwards looking, right? They don't tell you about the future. They look backwards. So if you see a news report, let's say a company reports and, there'll be a manager's discussion and analysis. And then the management's coming out and, they have a, $10 billion or $100 billion stock repurchase program. What's that going to cause the stock price to do once it's announced? Yeah, okay. So that's just something I thought was interesting that you can kind of take a look at when you're combing through certain stocks and taking a look at different things. Is treasury stock and what the executives are doing with their own stock that they own in that company.